All right, we are recording live, and I want to welcome our presenter, Bruce Bailey. Welcome, Bruce. My name is Jim Curry. My face doesn't appear, but I am behind the Y block that you see. Current year president of the Yale Club. And I want to say a few things about Bruce before he kicks off, and then I'll turn it over to you, Bruce.
Okay.
Dr. Bailey was born in the UK and came to America as a child. He grew up in Troy, New York. He earned his bachelor's in mathematics from Cambridge University and his PhD in applied math from Princeton. And he completed a postdoc at New York University's Courant Institute, and then joined the math department at the U of A in 1988. He is an honors professor, teaching and research in math, sciences, education, and outreach. And he's also a founding member of the a cappella vocal ensemble Acoustic Groove, as well as a member of the board of several boards: Southern Arizona Science and Engineering Fair, Arizona Onstage Productions, the Arts Integration Solutions, and Arts Ability AZ. That's a lot of boards. Bruce also was awarded the Koffler Prize in Public Service and Outreach. And so, Bruce, very happily, I will turn it over to you, and you can handle the Q&A at the end. I'll say bid everybody goodbye when we finish.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, send me a quick yes or no in the chat if you can hear me. Well, if you can hear me, send me a yes in the chat, and if you can't hear me, then I will know that there's no sound. Oh, good. Okay, that is a good sign. And I would like to ask Jim, if you can. This is going to be a little bit of a delicate operation, but there are two Bruces. I wonder if you can mute the one that is talking right now, or maybe I can. Can I? Am I in charge of who is muted and who is not muted?
I can mute. I will mute the first one that's talking right now.
Okay.
There's also one that's already muted.
I will. Okay, we will unmute. Yeah, we will unmute the one that is not.
Okay, I'll ask you to unmute, and then I'll mute the other one. So, how are we doing there? I could not hear the.
Let's see. There's.
Bruce, I have one unmuted and one muted. The top one unmuted.
Command A.
Hey, Bruce, we're not receiving you
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Okay.
There we go.
Got you.
Okay. So this is good. I am going to. I have a feeling like there's still. Okay. We will go. We'll go with the computers we have. How does that sound?
Sounds fine. We have 25 in attending right now.
That's well. It is wonderful to be here, and I would like to give special big thanks to Jack for being my contact in the Yale Club, and let me go and share my screen, and we'll talk about what we're going to talk about. So here we go. So, musical instruments, math, science, history, education, and outreach, courtesy of the Yale Club of Tucson. Can you give me a big yes in the chat if you can see my first slide, if you can see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, so actually it turns out I cannot see what you're doing, so I'm glad that I got a nice visual. We are going to go into presentation mode, and I would like to quickly give you a very short introduction to outreach. The form of outreach that I do is I go out in the community in a converted school bus. Road Show. And this is actually not Tucson, Arizona. Does anyone recognize what town we're in?
Troy.
That is actually it is very close to Troy. This was actually filmed in Ithaca, New York, just a couple hundred miles away. The beautiful foliage gives it away, and the plant streets. And you see that we mix math and science demonstrations and presentations when we go visit schools. And in a minute, that's a physics experiment right there. But in the background here, you can see some of our large geometric sculptures. And you can see that, well, you probably can't hear, but you can see that my student Shane and I are actually demonstrating the production of sound with the kind of musical instrument that maybe you've never seen before. Long, straight aluminum rods that make loud and high-pitched piercing sounds. Kids love it. It brings math and science to life in a way that nothing else can. So let me go back to PowerPoint. And I actually got into this through music. How did I meet Jack Hughes? Well, Jack has always maintained a profound interest in what happens in the math department, the School of Mathematical Sciences. And the first time I met Jack, it turned out we have a common interest in vocal music. And that is what catacoustic groove looked like when we were standing still and not making any sounds. And here's what we look like. I think the sound is not coming through, but you can see that we had a good time. We generally did not use microphones. We would just perform in resonant spaces like the underpass under Speedway near the arts complex at the university. And although we were not using instruments, we were still experiencing all the all the things that make music exciting. So, music gets much more interesting. Well, music gets interesting in a different way when you start talking about instruments. And for all of human history, musical instruments have been at the forefront of technology and indeed also of art. And recently, when I say recently, I mean as in the last 500 years, the art and science of musical instrument making has dramatically expanded. And so this is a little bit of a mix of people that make instruments and people that play instruments. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back. That was my musician. I think everybody is familiar with the name of Stradivarius, creator of the modern family of instruments. So over the last 400 years, we've had modern instruments. And I'd like you to notice a couple of things. First of all, that he lived to be 93 years old. Being a maker of musical instruments is good for your health, good for your lifespan. And also notice that he started working at a period when the Baroque music was in its heyday, and he stopped making instruments in the early 1700s, before any of the great composers that we think of as being the masters of the violin. And we'll say a little bit more about Joseph Bologna, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, in a little bit. But proceeding with makers, Adolphe Sax, well-known to both woodwinds and brass instruments, because the saxophone combines aspects of woodwinds and brasses. That was his inspiration. Invented the saxophone in the middle of the 1800s, lived to be 80 years old. We call that passing away prematurely in the world of instrument makers. And say a little bit about Charlie Parker, or maybe this is the right moment. Charlie Parker was amongst the jazz greats who discovered the saxophone as a very young man and became a absolute master of the craft, and achieved world fame during his relatively short life of only 35 years. Les Paul, in the world of the electric guitar in the 20th century, was both an inventor and a player of electric guitars. And yeah. Oh, louder. And in fact, allow me to invite you. Let me. Well, I won't stop broadcasting, but please feel free to unmute your microphones and contribute verbal comments anytime. Something about PowerPoint means I can't follow the chat, so I would love it if questions and comments come sort of improvisationally. This is maybe it's a great month to be talking about jazz and our heritage from the great African American musicians of the early 20th century through to now, Black History Month. And I was talking about mentioning Les Paul briefly. Les Paul also lived to the age of 93 and played as well as made instruments. And it is a sad fact that many of the greatest electric guitar players, they passed prematurely. There's something about the rock star lifestyle that is not good for your health in the long run. But I'd like to I'd like to highlight Brian May, great electric guitar player, born in 1947, still alive. And I would like to, opinions may differ, especially medical opinion, but he did get a PhD in astrophysics after his career with Queen had kind of slowed down. And he did set a world record for taking 36 years to complete his doctorate at the Imperial College London. But maybe being a rock star is hazardous to your health, but being an astrophysicist is good for your health. And so Dr. May is still doing well, still doing music, still working in science. And for today, I would also like to talk about somebody who is maybe not as famous as anybody else up on the list. unmute your microphones and just give me a big hello saying, who has heard of Carleen Maley Hutchins? Very
No.
innovative. Go ahead, say again.
No.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if my audio is working. Absolutely, less famous than the others, but in a very real sense, the Stradivarius of the 20th century. Not only a great maker of instruments, but a creator of instruments. And so, not to be too confusing, I'm going to proceed on the next slide to back to Joseph Bologna's Chevalier de Saint-Georges, not a maker, but a player of the violin, also a composer, also a soldier and sword fighter. And so we have portraits of Joseph Bologna that have come down to us, some in which he is highlighted as a musician and some in which he's highlighted as a swordsman. And in honor of Black History Month, you notice that he is African French, born in the West Indies. Mother was an enslaved person on the plantation of his father. Not at all an unusual circumstance. But what was unusual is that the well-to-do father acknowledged the son, gave him the best education that money could buy in the middle of the 1700s, became a scholar, a musician, and also active in the French Revolution. And I'd like to play you just a few notes from the Bologna's String Quartet number 3. I do not want to play the 7 seconds of cleanser ads, but
watch NFL games
nor do I want to play
all season long with
3 seconds of the NFL. But here we are, and I am going to at this point, if you can't hear the audio, you are missing out. The audio will be available later, but amazing piece, beautiful string quartet number 3 by Joseph Bologna. And Bologna, like I said, I beg your pardon? He did live for 54 years. His early death was not due to being a musician, probably more to being a soldier during the French Revolution. In fact, he was imprisoned for a while for being a musician during the French Revolution. But during his life, he was very successful, friend of Mozart, and celebrated throughout Paris. And I mentioned Carleen Maley Hutchins, creator of an entire family of instruments built to mimic the proportions and sounds of violins specifically. And unmute microphones for a moment, and just tell me what looks similar and what looks different between the instruments that you see and the instruments that that you are used to in regular orchestras.
There's a big violas. Looks like a big cello.
Yeah, yes, that's right. The one of the things you notice is an enormous range in sizes. We're all familiar with the range of sizes between violin being little and double bass being big, but Carleen Hutchins reasoned that if you really want to play high notes, you should make an instrument that's even smaller than the violin, so that you don't have to be playing, up on the fingerboard all the time.
Bigger than a regular bass?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, much. And so the instruments proceed in size from the violino, the small violin, through the regular size violin, and 2 violas. There is a smaller viola that can be played under the chin like a violin or a regular viola. And there is a larger viola that is the instrument right behind Carleen's kitty cat. And it's a viola, but it has a pin like a cello that enables you to rest it on the floor. If you look really carefully, you see that it also has a chin rest. And so that if you want to, you can play it under your chin. I think you would have to decide beforehand whether you're going to use the pin or the chin rest, and then perform accordingly. You can't just switch back and forth in the middle of a piece. But then from the upright viola proceeds to a smaller cello, and then from the smaller cello on the seat, the leftmost instrument is a larger cello capable of playing lower notes. And then there are 2 basses as well, regular size bass and an ultra size bass for playing especially low sounds, but for playing them with the same kind of sonority and richness of tone that we achieve from violins. Now, not everybody approved of Carleen Hutchins's experiments with different sizes and shapes of string musical instruments. They were definitely a challenge to the status quo of the string musical instrument world. But go back 400 years, and Stradivarius was a challenge to the status quo of the stringed instrument world in the 1600s. And musical instruments have always been about, designers have always been creating new designs, new shapes, new sounds, and inspiring the composers that came afterwards to use the new instruments. So, when you talk about math, how do these things work? Well, all musical instruments vibrate. All musical instruments have mass that moves to and fro. Sometimes it's wood in the form of stringed instruments. Sometimes it's air in clarinets or flutes, woodwinds or brasses. And instruments all have elasticity. Wood is a very elastic and interesting substance. In wind instruments, the air itself has compressibility. When you squish it, it squishes back. It's a spring that you cannot see. And vibrating systems such as this not only have been studied in music for a long time, but even in science. And one of Galileo's epoch-changing experiments was to show by direct experimentation and observation that when you have a weight on the end of a string and swing it back and forth, the formula for how long it takes depends on how long it is. It depends on the gravity. It depends on our favorite number pi, if you're a mathematician, but it does not depend on how much mass you have on the end. And that was one of Galileo's first and definitely one of the revolutionary observations that he made right around the same time as Stradivarius was revolutionizing the world of violin making. So, in a very basic way, like the family of stringed instruments, there is a general tendency for big things to make low pitches and small things to make high pitches. But that is not a general rule. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and start sharing and start going back to video. And I'm hoping that first I have to turn on my lights because they turn off automatically in my office. And then we'll do a couple of experiments. Okay, so I have here some plastic tubes and one of them is very long, and then there's a shorter one and an even shorter one, and the very last one is the shortest of all. The Boomwhacker Company, I'm not sure if you can read the title there. For me, it's in mirror writing, but hopefully for you guys, you can read it. Is it, can you read Boomwhacker correctly in normal writing?
No.
Oh, am I? Okay, I'm sorry. Let's try again. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, so let's start again. I have here some plastic tubes, a long red one, a shorter yellow one, and a green one that is shorter than the yellow one, and a purple one that is shorter than the green one. Okay, and can you see those? And can you see the name Boomwhacker written on the tube? Okay, that's good. When you're doing live experiments, it helps if you can see them. So these are specially designed so that if you hit them, they make a beautiful sound. And when you hit when they become shorter, the pitch goes up higher, and the shorter they get, the higher the pitch, until you get to the very shortest one. Absolutely. I'm messing with you, of course. Like a good teacher, we get your attention by giving you a surprise, and then when we have your attention, then we say, okay, what is the same and different? Here is the green tube, which is longer, and the purple tube, which is shorter. And now that I'm not covering anything up with my hand, you can tell that there is something different about the purple one that is different from the green one. What is different about the purple one? Yeah, there's a cap on the end. And so there's more to size, there's more to pitch than just size. There are differential equations, and the differential equations have boundary conditions, and that means that you get a different sound depending on whether or not there is a cap on the end. And it's not as if the cap was very big, but a small object placed in exactly the right position can make a big influence to the sound, and that is a general rule that applies to anything in life. So that is one example of size making a big difference, but not being the only difference. And I would like to introduce you now to some even bigger pipes that make even lower sounds. I bought these guys at Home Depot, and they are basically sections of corrugated fence post, galvanized iron. And if you look very carefully, you can see that one of them is thick and one of them is thin. They're the same length, but one's thick and one's thin. And so you may be familiar with this instrument as a tubular bell, because when you hit it with a hammer, it makes a beautiful sound. And although they're the same length, one is thick and one is thin, and the difference between thick and thin also has an impact on the sound. And anybody familiar with guitars or violins or stringed instruments or pianos, they have thick strings and thin strings. And what is the difference in sound between the thick strings and the thin strings?
Thin or higher?
Absolutely. The thin strings are higher, the thick strings are lower. That's true on the guitar, true on the piano, true on the violin, the viola, all of those. But things are a little different with the tubular bells. Here's the thin one. And here is the thick one. It's a little hard for me to, I don't have my trusty assistant here so that they can hold it and I can hit both in succession, but, well, maybe I can, if I'm very careful, I can hold them together like a xylophone. So thick, thin, thick. And of course there's science in there, there's math in there, and we talk about that math and science in our undergraduate and in fact graduate classes here at the university. And for today, when I go to visit schools, I like to say, guys, something's mysterious here. How can we understand it? Well, stay in school and keep taking your math and science, and you'll find out about it in grad school, or at least undergrad school, because this is, when I visit elementary school, middle schools, I'm just there for a day. I'm not there to teach, but if we can get people curious, if we can get people engaged and saying, hey, there's more to this math stuff than worksheets, then we have had a good day. So let me go back to sharing PowerPoint, and oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Okay, so I didn't demonstrate the singing aluminum rods, although they are pretty exciting. But the lesson here is that there is more to the sound that comes out of an instrument than just how big it is. What else happens? Well, maybe I will talk about the aluminum rods. When we are talking about the sound waves in the colored plastic tubes, basically what's going on is the tubes are full of air and sound waves travel from one end of the tube to the other, and when they get to the end of the tube, they bounce back and go back to the first end. And because those sound waves travel at 300 meters per second, then if you have a tube that is maybe a third of a meter long, then you can have sound waves that vibrate at 100 vibrations per second or 200 vibrations per second, with the exact number depending on the exact travel time that sound takes to go from one end to the other. And of course, the same thing happens in radios and lasers, except that in radios and lasers and microwave ovens, the waves are traveling at the speed of light, not the speed of sound, which is very, very fast. And in recent years, we have also been able to observe not just light waves traveling, but gravity waves traveling. The waves of the gravitational waves that are created when two black holes far on the other side of the universe spin together and get sucked into the same black hole. Those waves also travel at the speed of light, or maybe if we say it better, light travels at the speed of gravity. And let me introduce you to the aluminum. I want to introduce you to the, well, maybe I'll do the aluminum rods later.
And is gravity the same?
That's what he said,
Because the waves that happen in violins are a little bit more complicated, because the string is held at the ends, but it vibrates from side to side. That's a little mysterious. And when you take a bow, which is a piece of wood that has horsehair tied onto it, and when you put rosin on that horsehair, then you have a frictional system in which the string slips and sticks under the hair. And for something that we are all familiar with seeing, it's a little odd. I'm going to show you an animation, and since this animation doesn't require sound, it should go through pretty well. You actually see three pictures here, and the bottom picture is what the violin string actually does. It looks as if it's moving in a pattern where the middle of the string vibrates a lot. The ends of the string are of course tied down at the one end or the other of the violin. And the two other pictures show you how the wave travels first from one end to the other, bounces off the fixed end and goes back. So that is a kind of motion that was actually identified by the scientist Helmholtz in the middle of the 1800s. And it was sort of conjectural for a long time, but now we can look at violin strings with high-speed video, and here is a very, very, very slowed down motion of what does a violin string do when somebody is playing it with a bow. And so, yep, it's moving. It is so, the motion has been slowed down so much it's hard to see that the bow is even moving. But if you watch carefully, you can see the bow moving sideways very slowly. And even though it's just beginning, you can see the string beginning to vibrate. And that corner that you saw in the animation is zipping from one end of the string to the other, probably at about 200 times, 196 times every second. So this video has been slowed down by a factor of 196. And what you see is really quite a dramatic visualization of what happens every time you see somebody playing the violin. So let me go back and say, if that's what the string is doing, what's happening with the rest of the violin? If you think about what Stradivarius did, or what Carleen Hutchins did 300 years later, they weren't working on the strings, they were working on the bodies of the musical instrument. And so there's a lot of physics and math going on with the bodies. And here is what those instruments look like. And I would like to show you, like many things, there's a difference between theory and practice with violins. In theory, all the curves of the violin are arcs of circles. Big circles for the large curves, small circles for the tighter curves, and intersections where you get the sharp points on the sides. And in fact, diagrams like that were exchanged and transmitted from violin maker to violin maker over the last few hundred years, because when you're making a violin, just tracing the outline of somebody else's violin is not going to be accurate enough. And if you really want to make an accurate reproduction of an instrument that has a beautiful sound and beautiful shape, then what you need is geometry and geometric instructions. And so on the left, you would see this is the kind of information that would be exchanged between makers or passed on from a maker to successor. And on the right-hand side is, well, that is not a Stradivarius, but I would like to show you that this is actually a real instrument. Let me stop sharing my screen. And okay, are we back? Let me turn on my lights.
No.
No.
Okay, so here we are. This is not my violin, but I borrowed it from a friend.
We can't see it.
Oh,
Still
oh no.
dark.
Okay. Oh, that is.
I can see it.
Oh, okay. So there we go. This is very okay. I should. Okay, some people can see me.
Still dark here.
Also here.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. Jack is suggesting to clear picture. I am a newcomer to Zoom. Well, I'm not a newcomer, but I keep learning new things about Zoom.
We don't
And
do.
yeah, but if Jack says clear the picture, then please go right ahead and clear the picture. And if you still can't see, then at least know that I'm playing that cardboard box.
Yep.
So nobody is claiming that's a Stradivarius, but it has the essential ingredients of all violins and in fact of all stringed instruments. And let me go back to PowerPoint and point out what do we have. No, it has the strings, it has the body, and it also has, very importantly, holes. And it turns out those holes are crucial to the sound in a violin or any stringed musical instrument. The body vibrates, but also the air inside vibrates. It's like in a wind instrument, the air inside vibrates, and all stringed instruments, well, most of them, guitars, violins, all have encased volumes that have holes so that the air inside can oscillate. And figuring out the oscillations of, well, first we'll figure out the oscillations of the body. And I'm here to say that when you think about how do different parts of an instrument vibrate, when you have long, thin things like strings or tubes of air, that's not too complicated. We can deal with it. We can deal with that with undergraduate math at the university level. When you want to understand how do two-dimensional things oscillate, either the plates of a violin or even just square pieces of metal, then we have some pretty complicated differential equations coming in here. And I want to highlight another amazing mathematician. You may or may not have heard of her. Great woman mathematician from the 18th and 19th century, who was the first one to correctly identify the equations for how two-dimensional shapes vibrate. And let me show you a video of a two-dimensional shape vibrating. This is a physics experiment at a university where a metal plate is being oscillated, and you can see that the plate oscillates more in some places, less in other places, and the sound moves away from the place where the oscillations are large, moves towards the places where the oscillation is small, and you get a graphical representation of how the object is moving. So that's the easy case. That is the case of a square or rectangular piece of metal. And things definitely get more complicated when you look at the pieces of wood that go into a violin. So this is one of the vibrational mode shapes for how the violin, I guess, did they say this was the back of the violin? Okay, either the back or the front. And the pictures that you see show how the violin actually moves while you're playing it. So this is, of course, the old-fashioned technique where you just put sand on it and see what's happening. If you want to get a more in-depth look at what's going on, you can use laser interferometry. And so the patterns that you see here show, you can see that the units are micrometers. How far is the wood vibrating? It's vibrating by very small amounts, but you can see the contours show where the vibrations are large, where the vibrations are small, and the relative importance, the importance of the location of the holes, and where's the violin wide, where's the violin narrow. All of these things play a major role in where's the violin vibrating, what is going to be the sound. And I will skip the last video because it requires sound. And I mentioned that that the air inside the violin plays a very important role in the sound. This was not something that people paid attention to until quite recently. I mentioned Carleen Hutchins, the maker from the 20th century, in living memory, and she was possibly the first practicing maker of violins to realize the importance of the shape and vibrations of the air inside the body of the violin. And I have a couple of those things here today. Let me go back to real life. How many of you can see that I am holding a Coca-Cola bottle? A bottle that formerly held Coca-Cola?
I can see it.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, I'll take that as a yes for everybody. And you have all probably done the same thing as me. Made a beautiful sound by blowing over the top. And in fact, it is harder to find these bottles nowadays, now that Coca-Cola mostly uses plastic bottles. But if you look really hard, you can still find the beautiful work of art, Coca-Cola bottles that defined the brand for a century. And beautiful sound. The only problem is that if you want to play a tune, you have to drink the water. And then you can't play any higher notes. So that is definitely a drawback of using a Coca-Cola bottle as a musical instrument. But in the spirit of Stradivarius and Sachs and Hutchins, we can create technological innovation by thinking outside the box or outside the bottle. And if you have a turkey baster, you can make the water go up and down while you're playing it. And when it's Halloween time, you can have a great time. And there is that is a very short a very short investigation of the many things that you can do with with a turkey baster and a good embouchure. And but they are also, you know, from a scientific point of view, you know, we're talking about things that have different shapes than being long and skinny. The Coca-Cola bottle and the turkey baster are not as complicated as violins with their F-holes, but they are definitely situations where shape as well as size has an impact on sound. So we are just about at the end. Whenever I visit a school or a boys and girls club or a library, and we spend the day messing around with musical instruments, I want to say that things didn't end with Stradivarius. Things started with Stradivarius. Stradivarius was the breaker of molds, the changer of the way people thought about stringed musical instruments. And over the last 3.5 centuries, other people have continued to challenge the status quo, help people think differently about musical instruments. And Joe Curtin from Ann Arbor has been doing the same thing into the 21st century. He picked up where the others left off with plate vibration analysis, laser interferometry, all kinds of his violin shop is full of the coolest science things you can imagine. And apparently the MacArthur Foundation agreed, gave him a Genius Award in 2005. So, you know, the work continues, and there's plenty of work. You can join in, your children, grandchildren, and Yale students, amongst, as well as University of Arizona students, taking us into the 21st century. And, you know, kids being born today are going to take us into the 22nd century. So thank you, Yale Club. Thank you, Jack, Jim, Belinda, everybody for having me. And I am yours for the rest of the afternoon with any other questions that anybody might like to bring in.
You could go into the issue of overtones and how overtones are part of what is the perception of what people call harmony.
Oh my goodness, Jack, that is that is the overtones is the essence of music. I didn't go into it, but everything we've talked about so far has been the one basic tone that an instrument produces. When I blow over the top of the Coca-Cola bottle, that is the fundamental frequency of the Coca-Cola bottle. What if I blow harder? That is quite a different sound. That is also a possible sound. And when you have, most musical instruments produce all of these different sounds all at the same time. And so the reason you can tell a trumpet from a saxophone, from a clarinet, or a viola from a violin, if they're playing the same note, is all about the overtones. It is about the other notes that are included in the note that you're hearing, that you don't always know that you're hearing it, but they have a profound influence on the experience of music. It's why we have all the instruments. And let me let me enlarge on that for just 1 second. Not only musical instruments, most of us could tell the difference between a man singing a high note, ah, and a woman singing a low note. What's the difference? It's not the note, it's the overtones. And our ears are very, very sensitively attuned to figuring out, are we listening to a man or a woman, by the overtones. And then last but not least, how can you tell that I'm saying ah instead of e? Different vowels come from different overtones, even if the notes are the same. So, Jack, my hat is off to you.
There's an excellent question in the chat area, and that's to comment on the didgeridoo of Australia.
Yeah. Again, let me comment on the didgeridoo. Let me. You'll have to stop me commenting on the didgeridoo, because the didgeridoo is a simple instrument, a hollowed out piece of wood. It is somewhat modified at the mouthpiece to for ease of playing, but players of the didgeridoo are able to get an enormous variety of tones. And Jack mentioned overtones. Yes, the didgeridoo players manipulate the overtones so that the mix changes all the time during the performance, during the sound. So for one single pipe, single tube with nothing inside, no moving parts, a didgeridoo can play many different instruments all at the same time. And so that is because the performers are amazing. And that is my very short statement on didgeridoos.
Well, some more questions may be appearing shortly. I'll throw one further at you. At one point in Tibet, I actually heard singers that from one voice could sing 2 notes at the same time. And whether that was recruiting an overtone or what it was, but I've never seen it anywhere else heard it anywhere else in the world.
Jack, yes, you are absolutely right. Has anybody else experienced or heard the kind of Central Asian Tuvan throat singing that Jack refers to?
Yes.
And that was, say
Belinda.
again, yes. Belinda, yes. Under what circumstances were you in Asia, like Jack?
Both in Asia, and also I have heard a concert given, I believe, in Tucson by a group of Central Asian musicians.
Oh, okay. Would that happen to have been about 15 years ago in I forget what the building is at 13th Street and 6th Avenue?
It was in that building. I don't remember when.
Belinda, I think you and I were probably in the same room at the same time, listening to the same people, and thinking, how did they do that? And over the years, I have attempted to do the same thing myself. I won't try right this second because I bet there may be some other questions. But on the other hand, I am definitely prepared to try if there are no other questions.
This is Jim, Bruce. I
Jim.
don't know if you can see the Q&A symbol down at the bottom. Perhaps you can't, but
I can. Yes, there we go.
So you can see that Toby Sidney has a question there.
Yeah, yes, Toby. What you said. Instruments made of wood are very complicated. Wood is a living material. Wood does not stop living when you cut the tree down, nor does it stop changing at any time afterwards. And what happens to wood over the years depends on what is happening to it. Recently I took up playing the viola, and I bought an old viola from the folk shop on Campbell Avenue, and it sounded okay, and I practiced, and I was doing my best to get better, but I had this really strong suspicion that the viola itself was sounding different, and so I checked with my teacher, and actually I checked with the teacher of my teacher, who is the violin professor, who is the viola professor here at the university, and the university viola professor, whose name is Maley got back to me and said, yes, even a viola that is 100 years old, the wood maybe 200 years old, the history, the playing history, you were talking about the history over years and years of being played by different people. Even the recent history of being played by me over the course of a couple of months was enough to loosen things up, change the elastic moduli in the material, and yes, instruments are living things, regardless of how long ago the tree was cut down. Yeah, let me, and Belinda, I see you have a question about outreach programs. Let me answer that question very quickly, which is that people call us up and we go out and visit schools. So of course there's more to it than that. It is more complicated. We spend a lot of time going out to events where people, where we think we'll run into people, like the Festival of Books before the pandemic, or big days at the children's museums. So we love going out and working with children and seek out opportunities to do that. I saw there was a listener was a teacher, and we love working with teachers. We love working with the students. It is real easy to get us to come out, which is call us up and we're there. And even during the pandemic, we'll go out on Zoom. Let me go, and I want to follow up Toby's question, because there was a video that I did not show, and I'm going to experiment with muting my microphone and then see if we can get some sound. So I'm going to mute my microphone. You won't be able to hear me for a minute, but you might be able to hear the video.
Find the Yale Club.
Well, actually, I've been interested in wood and loved it ever since I can remember. I learned a lot about woodcraft, which has given me a feel for the trees and the woods and how they relate. This can be used for the half of the top of a violin, and the other piece we had is, well, this will be one half of it. Here's the other half. And this will make the top of a viola when it's put together. Now, there are a couple of knots in here, and the plan is to try to work around those knots.
Wow. Show that to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess you weren't able to hear her talking.
Yeah.
But
We could hear.
oh,
Yeah.
you were able to hear her. I couldn't hear her. well, maybe you want to hear some more, but yeah, that is the closest to meeting Mr. Stradivarius himself that we can come to. Carleen Hutchins definitely practiced the art of cutting down your own wood, selecting, splitting your pieces, seeing where, what pieces are going to sound good when you make your instrument. Did she get as far as saying that she was going to create the back of a viola from?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are, when I was watching that, I was overwhelmed by the the expertise that goes into selecting the wood, and even when you're just like chopping it with an axe. This is not that is not the the moment of sort of fine craftsmanship, but you got to have the muscles, you got to have the big shoulders to be a violin maker, and I'm not sure what year that was made, but Carleen Hutchins was out there with the axe splitting the wood as long as she was making her violins during her and violas and instruments over her extensive career. So we might have just cracked the mystery of why instrument makers live for a long time. It's all that healthy outdoor exercise. That was a long answer to, that was a continued answer to Toby's question about the wood, and we didn't even see it in this process of being played for hundreds of years by artists, one after another. But it speaks to what goes on, and there are other. I see it is now. Oh my goodness! It is long after 1 o'clock. Jim said that that you guys will be posting the video of the presentation, but I will be happy to.
With your permission.
With my enthusiastic, I'm enthusiastic that you can share the video, but I will also email you my slides, and the slides have links to the videos, and when you play the slides, you'll be able to play the videos, and maybe for my very last thing, after I say thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming back as a guest to the next one, because I love these presentations. I am going to go back to the video of Joseph Bologna's String Quartet No. 3, which is a beautiful, beautiful piece, and I think you will all enjoy it. How does that sound?
That sounds great, Bruce. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll say goodbye here, and we'll listen to your piece. We want to thank you for wetting all of our whistles, and we look forward to your visiting us again. We will be featuring, for everybody else's benefit, Donata Vercelli next month, May 4th.
Oh, fantastic.
Professor of Cellular and Molecular Medicine.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll listen to your piece now, Bruce. Thank you.
Okay, great. So.
I wonder if we put in Carleen Hutchins, violin maker, would bring up that.
It might, yeah. We might go probably a YouTube. Carleen.
Oh yeah, how do you spell that?
Yes, there are many. Sorry about the ads.
Ordinary
Jake,
tissues
play
cause your
poker.
nose dread. Try soothing puffs plus lotion instead.
WQXR. Violin, viola, cello, and bass.
Bruce, this is Jim. While we're listening to this, perhaps you could check the questions again and type an answer to Walter. He has a question. Maybe Bruce can't hear.
Okay. I'm back. And
Yes, Bruce, did you see the question from Walter?
I will see the question from Walter in a moment, I think. Oh, yes. Oh my goodness. Yes, 1969 to 1970. Walter, you and I might have read the same article. I was a nerdy kid, and my parents subscribed to Scientific American in the 1960s and 70s, and there was at least one article by Carleen, Hutchins, and a collaborator whose last name was Saunders about violins and the science of violins, and so I was a young, impressionable child at the time, and if we're thinking about the same article, that article played a major role in turning my my interest to my interest. I was good at math, but what can you do with math? I ended up becoming really interested in the math of acoustics and vibrations and musical instruments. So yes, that I can certainly comment on that article, which was a great article, and changed my life. Were you able to hear that?
I was able to hear it. This is Jim. I assume he was.
Oh, good. Okay. Walt, are you there? Did that article change your life too? Possibly it did, if you remember it 50 years later. Yeah. Scientific American changed many people's lives. And I was probably not the only nerdy kid who read really, really good articles that that a nerdy kid could read. I didn't understand all the details, but whoever wrote that article conveyed excitement and kind of the gist of what was going on, even if I didn't know the math. So
again, thank you very, very much, Bruce, for this very interesting time. We will see what we can do to get the slide presentation posted along with the recording of this presentation.
That sounds wonderful.
We'll consult with our technical friends and see what can be done. At this point,
Okay.
I'm going to sign off and thank everybody for their attending. And we very, very much appreciate it and hope you will tune in here again.
You bet. Well, we will see you in March.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye-bye, everybody.